Hi everyone. I hope you guys are fine. So this is our class, which is on past papers. So what I'm trying to do, as you saw in the post and also in the email to the senior students, just trying to solve papers or the recent one. Variant two only because we have a little time to solve all the variants. But at least what we'll do is this, that we get a lot of topics and discussion done. The best way to go about this class is, guys, you need to make sure that you solve the paper from before. So that way, at least I know that you guys are sorted. And you can ask me questions. What I'm trying to sort of do right now is that I've put everyone on mute because there are a lot of people who are joining us. So it'll be difficult if somebody unmutes and the voice becomes a problem. You can chat. You can, write your message here. All appropriate messages, of course, because then will be not nice if you write something which is offensive. Anyways, quickly we'll do this. What I've also done is that if you look at Alt Academy's app, or I've made all the new videos for the content for AS. So on Alt Academy, you will find all the new videos, and on the website, what you can do is that you can find the notes to go along with it. So if you're doing a revision, because a lot of people were writing, like this is past papers, I also want to do revision. The best way is that, let's say you pick up a topic, let's say pick up a topic like inflation, and it's called Alt Academy. Let me write this. So altacademy.org, www, it has all the new videos according to the notes. So let's say you say I'm struggling in, for example, causes of inflation. So you can go read the notes and watch the video. The video is for 10 minutes, quick video, and that can actually make your topic by topic kind of problem to be solved as well. So the idea goes is that, like, if I were you, I would basically pick up a topic, uh, see the video, see the sort of read the notes, and quickly do past papers. If you are, because I was a student as well, and best way to prepare is if you are sorted with 5 years of past paper sort of questions, you're fine. So 5 years of past paper questions done properly is the best way to go about it. Okay, so this is, if you have any questions, please ask me, otherwise we are starting the paper. And if you feel I'm speaking really fast, which sometimes I end up doing, so you guys could totally stop me. And अगर आप चाहते हैं कि मैं उर्दू में बात करूं तो मैं उर्दू में भी बात कर सकता हूं. लेकिन जो भी हो, you guys could sort of write it. The idea goes this, guys. This is a session where I want everyone to ask me questions about others, and we practice basically. कई चीजें बड़ी इंपॉर्टेंट होती हैं जिसमें आपका ग्रेड नहीं आता है, and I want to sort of say this because a lot of us do not understand कि while you prepared for your exam, why didn't you get an A? Is because वो evaluation जो होती है वहां पे हम मार खाते हैं. So the evaluation part is what I really want to emphasize when I'm solving these papers. So you got to make sure your evaluations are sorted, and that's exactly why by solving these papers I want to sort of go back to emphasize on the evaluation. Okay, what are evaluation? If somebody is asking me, I'll also talk about when they come. Okay, so are we good to start? Any questions, guys? Is there any sound issue or anything else? The paragraphing does matter, because if you have a new point, Zed, honestly, writing it in a paragraph just makes the presentation easier. The examiner will find it easy to read. So yeah, if you ask me, paragraph is probably important in that manner. Okay, guys, let's start. So the data response, which is a compulsory question, is the first one we do. It's always good to get the data response out of the way. This one is about rice farmers in Cambodia. In chat, yes, I can do that. I can just quickly send you guys this paper in chat also. That's a good idea. Thank you for asking. Let me just quickly send you this right away. Okay. Just a minute, guys. I was thinking about sending this earlier also. Guys, I just sent the paper also. It's 9708. Uh, and the paper is basically um, can you guys see that? Okay, great. Let's start, guys. So rice farmers across Cambodia and Myanmar in South Asia have been left searching for new markets for their crop after EU has announced that it will be imposing substantial tariffs. So EU is posing substantial tariffs on these countries, and it is doing it on rice from both countries for the next 3 years. So they're putting the paper I just shared on the chat, so you can download it from the chat. Uh, Let me send it to everyone else. In fact, I send it to only one individual here. That's why. Sorry, guys. Okay, so guys, so what happens here is just that now you have it. Let's start. An investigation has confirmed that the increase in rice import from these countries has been damaging to the EU rice producers. So EU rice producers are suffering, and as a result, the EU government has put some tariffs on these guys. Representative of EU farmers welcome the decision as the cheap rice imported from Southeast Asia has been contributing to EU farmers and laborers leaving agriculture and migrating to town. So farmers in the EU were suffering because the Southeast Asian rice was really cheap. But now when you put a tariff, this can stop the import from Southeast Asian countries. So EU rice imports from two South Asian countries increased from 9,000 to 360,000, which is a huge jump. And in 2018, approximately 30% of all EU imports was coming from with duty-free status, with most being shipped from Cambodia and Myanmar. So these countries were enjoying the duty-free status, and that's why a lot of imports were coming. Now, this increase in low-price import has caused serious difficulties for EU producers. The market share in the EU dropped substantially from 61% to 29%. So now you can see that the market is actually suffering from this. Now, Cambodia and Myanmar uh, also have enjoyed duty-free exports since 2010. So when tariffs on the crops were removed as part of the policy aims to promote EU trade with the world's 50 least developed countries. So they recently got the status since 2010 where they were allowed to import without duties, right? Now, moving on, other more developed countries in Southeast Asia, including Thailand and Vietnam, have long been paying tariffs of around 200 per ton. But Cambodia and Myamar rice is a major export, and EU has become their most profitable market. So what EU did was that they gave them duty free, and that made the market to go up for these two countries. But now they're putting tariffs. So the EU is currently Cambodia's largest destination for rice exports, roughly 43%. It has thought that Cambodia's rice industry could be put in a critical condition as a result of EU tariffs. In order to offset the additional costs resulting from the tariffs, local rice farmers will have to cut production costs because, of course, if you are put a tariff, then your price will go up. All you can do is try to make the production costs go down so that you can still become as effective as possible, and may need to grow different crops altogether. One suggestion is government subsidies could make Cambodia rice industries more competitive. So one way you can do that is by putting a government giving you a subsidy and so on. The impact of the tariff will ultimately depend on the extent to which EU consumers consider rice produced in the EU to be a good substitute. In other words, price elasticity of demand for Cambodian rice. So consumers in Europe may not mind paying a bit more for Cambodian rice. Maybe they like Cambodian rice. Maybe that's good in quality. Myanmar is in a similar situation as the EU has become one of Myanmar's major rice market. Myamar reached an all-time high of 293,000 tons So they talk about how Myanmar is also a huge market in that context. Uh, Now, but this could change now. There's a high barrier of entry to the EU rice market, forcing farmers to look closer at home for different buyers. Myanmar Rice Federation stated the EU decision to levy tariffs on the country's rice exports had serious potential. So, just quickly, let's look at the sort of data response. The text isn't difficult. Normally, the text is long, but we might get some answers, other answers we may not get. So let's look at the questions. Compare the changes in the price level in Myanmar with that of Cambodia. And then they're saying between 2016 and 2018. Now, guys, change in price level means that they have given you, if you look at this table, this is what the table they've given you, which is consumer prices, annual percentage change. So this means that they've given you basically percentage change in prices. Okay. And they're asking you what is happening to the changes in price level. Price level versus they've given you a rate of inflation. Does that make sense, guys? Do you guys understand what they're saying? So what we need to do when you look at this data, just to quickly look at it, your uh, Myanmar price level is basically consumer prices are at 6.8%. They were rising at 6.8%, and then they rose at 4%, and they rose at 7.1%. Versus Cambodia is 3, 2.9, and 2.5. So can I say this quickly that if you look at the changes in price level, number one, the price this because this is the rate, the prices are rising by more when you look at Myanmar versus Cambodia because the rate is higher. Okay, so first is Myamar prices are rising faster. Why am I saying they're rising faster? Because the inflation rate is higher. Does that make sense? Number one is that point. Any question, if you have, please ask me. Otherwise, we're good to go. The second, because it's a 2-mark question, I'm going to have to write 2 points here about the data. Second thing you can say this, that the, when you look at the, data for Cambodia versus Myanmar, the price level kind of like fluctuate much more in Myanmar's case because it was 6.8 versus 4 versus 7.1. But here the rate is fluctuating by much less. So not only Myanmar prices are rising faster, but they are more fluctuating. Got it, guys? Does that make sense? I hope you guys have no question. If you have, please ask me. Otherwise, we sorted. Are we good to move on? Okay, that's great. Awesome, guys. Now, B part. Compare the current account balance of Myanmar with that of Cambodia. Now look at current account balance, and they're asking about 2018 only. So if you look at 2018, Myanmar has a larger current account deficit than Cambodia. I'm sorry, Cambodia has a larger current account deficit than Myanmar. Number one point is this. Because this is a 2-mark question, I have to give 2 points. Remember, this is very clear. The marks will indicate you how much you need to write. So first point first is this idea that the deficit for Cambodia is larger than Myanmar, number one. And number two, one could argue this also, that Myanmar has, both Myanmar and Cambodia has a deficit. So both have a deficit. And number 2 point that I will point out here is this, that the deficit is larger as a percentage, because this is as a percentage of national income. So I'll write this exact term as a percentage of national income than Cambodia. I'm saying for Myanmar. Somebody's asking me, Shariar is asking me, why are prices fluctuating? Shariar, honestly, they didn't give us any reason why prices are fluctuating too much. It could be inflation could be more higher, and so on. So deficit is larger as a percentage of national income uh, for Cambodia. Sorry, let me just I've just have too little space here. So number one point is both have a large deficit, and second is that Cambodia has a larger deficit as a percentage of income or national income. Okay, I'm trying to write. Can we also not talk about the net effect? No, you don't need to, Aslan. Uh, the thing about data response is that try to give them exactly what they're asking for, unless they have a question that requires you to explain or discuss and so on. Okay, Cambodia does have a minus 13.6, uh, has a larger deficit. Exactly. Okay. The third point that we'll mention is the third question. I'm looking at this one now. Explain any two policies that could improve the competitiveness of rice for Myanmar and Cambodia in the EU market. So this is about any two policies that you can adopt. So there are some that they have mentioned here, guys. If I go back to the passage, they have mentioned something which is also given in our passage. The first one they talked about is about government subsidies. So if you look at this point, government subsidies could make Cambodia rice industry more competitive. That's the one. They also talk about cutting production cost. Okay, or may need to go grow different crops. So some of these things that they have mentioned here, that if you have an additional tariff cost that is taking place, you could do this, like cut production costs, you could grow different crops and so on and so forth. So in this, what we write, guys, is this, that you need to give. Oh, I'm so sorry, guys. Is that the case? I'm so sorry. I didn't know that this has a meeting capacity. I think we have exceeded the meeting capacity for some reason. What I'm doing is that I'm recording this next time I'll change the meeting capacity. So I need to apologize for that, guys. I didn't realize that. I'm so sorry. I just realized that we have actually 100 people already in. So that's the capacity. I never thought this class is going to go beyond 100. So can you tell your friend that this session will be also available later as a recording, and I'll next time I'm going to make sure that I'll increase the capacity. Okay. So sorry about this, guys. Okay. Sorry. So the policy number one, the government could give subsidy. So this is a, guys, this is a 4-mark question. So I'm looking at basically you need to first identify policies. Number one, we looked at the passage. They said government could give subsidies. That's one policy. The government giving subsidy would means cost of production will fall, and cost of production will falling means the government, the producers can become more competitive. Okay, producers can become more. The recording will be available on the YouTube channel. If you go on YouTube, there is Ali Anwarzada's the economics channel. You can find the recordings there as well. So Anisha, you can get that. For CEDAR students, I'll also email you guys the link of the recording. Okay, for non-CEDAR, I'll put it up on YouTube. No, but no, guys, no, Sonal, you can't mention here because they're saying minimum price. The problem with minimum price is put above equilibrium. It will make the goods expensive. Maybe, yeah, if you put a maximum price, you could do that. But here, we can stick with what the passage is also providing us. You can talk about other things. Let's talk about other things in 1 minute. Somebody was saying government can reduce aggregate demand, but that's macro. This is still MESM, a micro kind of a question. They're saying any two policies that could improve the competitiveness of rice, and the idea is subsidies, or which can cause the cost of production to go down and make it more competitive. That's number one. Number two, guys, that what the government, what policy we could adopt is something which is mentioning here. Basically, reducing production costs. So, like better technology, you can talk about better technology can result in cost of production to fall, and therefore we can become more competitive, because now the tariff has made us more expensive, right? So we need to find ways to yeah, if there is any indirect taxes, which is the opposite subsidies, we can do that. Yeah, exactly, some people are writing the right thing. You don't include, again, Myra, you can't include fiscal policy here. We are still in a micro kind of zone of answer. I mean, when you write fiscal policy, it's a whole policy, right? So it's too much information. Guys, one more thing you could do, guys, which is also something we can do, is the government can give basically incentives to become, better by basically our research and development and improving the quality or competitiveness. Like if the demand is inelastic, then people will buy more of your good despite the price. So you can do that. You can basically uh, focus on quality. So the idea goes this: in this, not only you need to mention what the strategy, like subsidies or better technology, but you need to tell examiner how it will improve, because it's a 4-mark question and it's an explain question. Okay. Okay, let's move on to D part. Discuss two factors that will determine the extent of the impact of the EU tariffs will have on the economies of Myanmar and Cambodia. So, in other words, what are the two factors that will determine the extent of the impact when you are putting a tariff? Let me first explain what happens after the tariff, and then let's look at what they're asking. When you put a tariff, we know this, that tariff will make the level of exports to EU fall, which will cause unemployment to rise, GDP of the country to fall, and also loss of, your standard of living, right? This is what is basically happening. Right now, they're saying discuss two factors that will determine how much of this will be an impact. We know this is the impact. How much of this will be an impact will depend on EU stands for European Union. We just discussed this, Sheikh. We just discussed this in a EU means European Union. European Union was putting a tariff on these two countries yeah, Tabish, very good point, Tabish. Tabish said one of the reasons, one of the factor will be price elasticity of demand. Very good point, Tabish. PED will be the first. If the good is inelastic, if the rice is inelastic, like I know basmati rice is the rice that a lot of people abroad who are from India and Pakistan, they consume that. So if the demand is inelastic, that if the price goes up, quantity will not fall by little, or quantity will fall by little, by less, and as a result, total revenue will still be the same. So the first factor that one could argue this is not going to be a problem is because what if the goods are inelastic? Because if the goods are inelastic, then there will not be significant change that can happen. But they're asking for two factors, any two factors. The second factor you can mention, guys, is good job. Abdul Mois also said a very good point. Whether the government is able to, or whether producers are able to find a different, find an alternative market. Let's say if EU has banned it or has put a tariff, what if you are able to sell it to the US market, right? So that could also be a factor. Or what if your domestic demand is growing stronger? Got it? So you can also mention this point is as what could basically, in other words, you're basically pointing a counter argument to all of these, because we know this, that there will be a loss, but what if you have better you have an inelastic demand, or another one could be, like what if uh, one sector like rice sector is going bad, but you might have, look at this, what they said here, something about may need to grow different crops altogether. So maybe growing different crops or ability to grow different crops could also be mentioned here. Guys, does that make sense? Discuss the view. Now I want to talk about next part. Now, guys, discuss means this is where the evaluation comes into play. A lot of times we end up doing this, and this is really important for all my students to remember this, that a lot of time what happens is we do not we just state the points, we don't discuss it. So this is where this is an evaluation, because they're saying that, like we know this, that tariff will make these countries suffer. What are the factors that will determine that? Which means that you're now evaluating other factors that could basically determine how bad will be this impact. And the examiner, how much to write? They are saying two factors. So you're looking at if you look at examiner sort of marking scheme, he will give you 1 mark for identifying the factor, 1 mark for explaining it, and also then linking it to the impact on the economy. So for example, like if I say PED, I mentioned PED, I talk about when the demand is inelastic, it will be less than proportional change in quantity demanded, and therefore these countries will not suffer too much because the exports will not fall by that much. So this is how the whole point, 1 point is explained. Similarly, if I say, if you find an alternative market, I'll get 1 mark for that. How alternative market would mean the demand will not fall, and therefore the countries will still be able to sell their rice. So this is how the 6 marks are divided. Sharia, does that answer your question? So that's why two different points, but the idea is that identifying the point, giving linking it up, and so on, all of this matter. A lot of time we just identify, we don't give the explanation, and that's where we lose marks. Okay, let's look at E part. Discuss the view that EU should give tariff-free access to the EU market to all producers of rice. So the view that EU should give tariff-free access is again a discussed question. If they give a tariff-free access to all producers, basically of rice, we are talking about, should they be free trade versus no free trade? Because tariff-free access means free trade. So this is the arguments for free trade, right? And basically these are arguments against free trade. So this is where we talk about, why do you want free trade? Well, there will be lower prices for consumers. If you give this, the lower prices for consumers, right? There will be higher efficiency because the inefficient domestic producers will not be producing more. There will be more variety available, right? Variety and choice available for consumers, exactly. So you can mention that. You can talk about, any other benefit, guys, that we can mention. We can talk about, we can talk about how comparative advantage will mean if the countries are focusing on goods they're good at. There is a comparative advantage theory argues this, that will result in more output and efficiency and so on, and higher living standard is also a good one. Exactly. So we know a lot of arguments. So you need to mention at least 3 arguments for why they should. And then let's talk about against arguments. The against argument will be, number 1 will be, if you are going to give no, if there is free trade, there will be then a problem of, like issues like, for example, a loss of jobs, right? Declining industry or loss of jobs that can happen. We also saw there could also be a possibility that there could be issues of, no, here Zad, we're looking at, you mentioned transportation costs, but we're looking at basically what are the downside of giving free trade? You have loss of jobs, you have loss of GDP. Yeah, because AD will fall as exports are going down. Also, we're buying, yeah, loss of revenue, very good job. Loss of revenue, loss of revenue from tariff, very good. And that could be another one could be standard of living to fall. Okay, so this is a great sort of discussion. There is a deficit in the current account. That's another one. Good job, Haris. There is a deficit in the current account. You guys are pretty ready for exams. I'm so happy to see the answers. Dumping, I won't mention unless there is dumping happening here. You know, Devdas, I'm going to be careful about mentioning dumping here. But dumping is a great reason why you would. Why would standard of living fall, Hafsa? Because AD falls, GDP falls, standard of living falls. GDP and standard of living are closely related to each other. Depreciation of Europe, that could also be an argument because your currency can become weaker in the foreign exchange market. Yes, very good. Guys, we are overkilling it now. You guys have done a good job. Let's move on to section 2. Okay, section 2. Let's just first talk about general tips and then talk about, like what question should I do? What should I not do? Do not do a question. So this is evaluation in this, guys. Yeah, somebody was saying, is there a conclusion? So here the evaluation is basically considering both sides of the argument. Okay, guys, remember this is considering both sides of the argument is evaluation. Makes sense? Somebody was asking, what is the evaluation for this one? Here you just need to conclude your answer. Does that make sense? I'm unable to read your name, but basically here you need to conclude your answer in order to make sure you are giving your answer properly. Okay, so make sure you conclude your answer. Say, okay, these are the arguments that need to be considered for EU to decide whether they should have free trade or not. Okay, that's my conclusion here. Does that make sense? Okay, great. Now, let's go back to this section, section B. A lot of times, a lot of students end up doing an answer that is the most easy question, and that is the worst thing you could do to yourself. Because if you choose the question that is the most easy one, more likely you have little to write, and more likely it's open-ended, and more likely you won't be able to score, and more likely the examiner is also sort of grading it in a more strict manner. Having said that, if that is the only question that or that is the question which is your favorite, then do it. Don't think twice. Don't say, oh my God, I'm doing this easy one because this was the best one that you have to do, then this is the best one you will do. Okay, now let's start with 2. I like to do micro questions more than macro questions. I mean, as a student, when I was your age, I used to like micro, but honestly, micro or macro, it all depends on whichever topic you feel is your strength. Okay, let's look at 2A. In 2018, the UK government concerned about the rise in obesity, particularly amongst young people, imposed a tax on producer of, so you put a tax on sugar sweetened goods or drinks. State what is meant by demerit goods. So they're asking us the definition of demerit good. And with the help of a diagram, explain how a tax on producer can improve the allocation of resources in the market for sugar sweetened drinks. Okay, so let's solve this question. So first I will do this. I will define, guys, I will define demerit goods. Okay. Any questions, guys, before we move on? So first thing first, we will define demerit goods, and then we will draw a diagram for demerit goods. And then what we'll do is show how a tax is going to solve the problem of demerit goods. And this is not a evaluation question, so I don't need to discuss the pros and cons, but this is more of of a explain question. Okay, so let's move on to talk about first what is demerit good. So a demerit good is a good which is has two features. Number one, it has a negative consumption externality, which means not only it harms the consumer, but also the society. Example, cigarette, the consumption of cigarette not only will harm you, but it also will harm the people around you in terms of passive smoking and so on. Number two, guys, it also is a demerit good because of information failure, which means that people are not aware of the harm of it, the cost, or rather the benefit is incurred today. You may smoke a cigarette and you like it today, but the cost is incurred in the future in terms of health concerns and all that. So there is an information failure that takes place. Also, guys, you can say these because these goods are addictive, they can cause basically people to be not the best judge of their own interests. As a result, guys, what happens is that when you are looking at demerit goods, the problem that happens is this, that in the case of demerit goods, they are overconsumed. So if this is my demand and supply of these goods, and this is the price and quantity, the demand should be less than what it is right now. So this should be the demand. Because these goods are harmful, they should be consumed less. So there is what we call an over consumption of these goods, because exactly demand is more than what is socially desirable. So there's overconsumption of these goods. Exactly, guys. And as a result of this overconsumption, guys, what the government should do. So basically, now let's go back to our question. So I explained what demerit goods is. I made a diagram to show why it's overproduced. And now I'm going to show you when you put a tax, what will happen. When you put an indirect tax, I'll explain what an indirect tax is a tax on expenditure. What it does is that it results in costs of production to go up, supply to fall, and the price to rise. So I will show this in this diagram only. Yeah, I can, Iman, I can do that. The demand and supply is currently of cigarettes like this, but demand should be D dash. So D dash is what we call the socially desirable demand. The demand should be less because cigarettes are harmful, for example, and a result, you should buy less of them. Now, when you do so, because you're not demanding this one, you're demanding this, the government may need to make the quantity to become Q1. So when the government decides to put a tax, let's put a tax. How do we have to explain D dash? We say this is the demand should be less for these goods because they have a negative externality. So when you put a tax now, guys, when you put a tax on this good, supply curve will shift backward. Okay. And therefore, with my existing demand D, okay, I should make it in the new diagram because this will make it confusing. So I'll put a tax on a good like this. So right now the demand is D, the supply is S. The price is P naught, the quantity is Q naught. Quantity and price, some of you guys are writing. I'll go back to your questions in 1 minute. the supply curve should shift backward. Price has gone up, quantity has gone down. So this is what will happen. When you put an indirect tax, it will result in supply curve to shift backward, the price to go up, the quantity to fall. And we hope that quantity will fall to the socially desirable level. So you need to explain how the tax is going to increase the cost of production. It will increase the price, reduce the consumption of the good, and will solve the market failure because there's too much of this good has been consumed. It is true, demand for these goods are inelastic. When you put a tax, it may not be that effective, but they're not asking for evaluation. Guys, they're not asking for evaluation. In these cases, Shahir, you need to put a specific tax. Example of demerit goods other than cigarettes could be alcohol. It could be even like, for example, when you look at any good that's consumption of it could harm others. Some people feel driving cars could be demerit goods because you're polluting the environment, and so this is also undesirable. You don't need to show burden of taxation. The question is not asking about it. Guys, one more thing you need to understand how much to write. Writing too much means you're also wasting time. Okay, so be careful about that. Any other question, guys, before we move on? If this was a 12-mark question, Tabesh, they would have said discuss, and then we would have given evaluation. In fact, let's look at B part. For our ease, let's look at B part. Compare the likely effectiveness of a policy of imposing a minimum price on demerit goods, okay, with one other policy to improve public health, and consider which policy is more likely to be successful. So first, let's look at what will minimum price do, okay? And this is a discuss question, right? So what about minimum price? When you put a minimum price is put above equilibrium. And the idea behind minimum price is that you want to put a minimum price for the benefit of producers. So this is unique. You are saying you want to put a minimum price in the case of a good like cigarette, for example. When you do that, this will result in the price to become like, this is the minimum price. So when you do that, this is P min. You are going to end up consumption to fall to, for example, Q1, but production to rise, and you might end up causing a surplus to happen. Now, because the consumption is going down, you can argue this, that this is going to work out well because the consumption is going down. But because you have ended up making a surplus to happen, it may not be a good policy. Why? Because when this surplus is happening, this surplus can go and be sold, in any illegal way, like black market. So if a black market ends up, having it where people, because producer has made this, the government doesn't buy. The most, why would government buy a surplus of cigarettes, or alcohol? It's a demerit good, so they should discourage the consumption and dispose of. Yeah, but that's a lot of money wasted. They can confiscate and they can burn that surplus, but they won't buy the surplus because buying the surplus will means a lot of money being wasted on cigarettes. Sometimes, inventory costs. Yeah, and of a good, like, yeah, you can export it, but everyone else is also, the view about demerit goods have changed, so everyone will be like, why are you selling us bad goods, and so on. So one thing is this strategy, you will explain what minimum price is. It's a price put above equilibrium. It will cause the quantity demanded to fall to Q1, so the strategy may work. But if this surplus go in the market in illegal way, like black market, and then sold for a lower price, because surplus will get wasted otherwise, then this will defeat the purpose. What other policy, because they're saying mention to policy, best thing we can do for demerit goods is provide awareness. So we could have, seminars, we could, government could export the surplus, but the point is that the good we're talking about is illegal sometimes, or not a desirable good. Information, Arsalan, very good job, good answer. And Nash Shuri, you can mention Nash Shuri here. Nudge is a concept you can mention it, but simply provide more awareness. Conduct seminars, let people know about the sort of disadvantages of goods. So you can talk about that. Now, evaluation is what will matter. And for evaluation, basically, you need to talk about the effectiveness of both policies. One is a price control, which can work, but you require policing, which means more money will be spent in order to do that. And the number two could be, like your information. And because demerit goods by definition has an information failure, providing awareness about the harms of demerit goods is essential no matter whatever policy we choose. So I can talk about that as an answer. Abdul Mois has also going a very good point. He's saying, like people may not understand or these goods are addictive, so it will be difficult for us to control its demand. You can also mention indirect taxes as a way. By the way, guys, indirect taxes requires elasticity of demand to be considered. Make sense? So this is a great question to ride. I mean, honestly, you have a lot to ride. So it's something which you should totally talk about. Now, I'm going to talk about 4 before I talk about 3. Yeah, Rohab, the conclusion for me will be I will talk about the fact that because demerit goods are inherently goods that have lack of information for consumers, providing information about their harm is an important thing to consider. Secondly, minimum price will only be successful if the government can control the surplus to be not sold in a market illegally, but that would mean more money will be spent and so on. If somebody's talking about indirect taxes, Sanjida, then you will talk about PED for evaluation for sure. That PED matters because the goods are inelastic. So when the price goes up, quantity will not fall by that much. In fact, even for minimum price, that's also something you can say price goes up, quantity will not fall by that much because it is inelastic to begin with. So these are all good points that we can mention here. Guys, I want to go to 4 before I move to 3. So let's move to 4. Do you have any questions, please? Let's 4. Give me what is meant by deflation and use AD and AS diagrams to explain how it might arise in an economy. So what is meant by deflation? Deflation is simply for Hi guys, so sorry guys, something happened to my internet, which is so bad. I'm so sorry guys. I hope I didn't lose many people. Can you guys hear me properly? So sorry guys. I apologize for the thing. Let me quickly share my screen. Okay, awesome. Guys, sorry. Can you hear me now? And can you see the screen? Okay, awesome. So we're doing the last question. Uh, so what is meant by deflation, and use AD to sort of to explain, right? So we talked about what is deflation. We just discussed that. Then we talk about the idea that it is negative rate of inflation, right? We talk about it's a negative rate of inflation. I will do that. I will provide the recording on in the to see the students in the email and also on the YouTube channel. So yeah, if you want to go, you can. Um, don't worry about that. Okay, guys, then we talk about what is meant by deflation and use the ADAS supply diagram to explain how it might arise. Then we talk about the idea that uh, you need to talk about the right diagram, right? So the deflation basically could happen because a rise of aggregate supply, and also you can talk about it can happen because of a fall of AD. So let's talk about both the cases. This is my AD and AS. We need to label it properly. It is price level on the y-axis, real GDP. So a fall of AD results in basically your price level to go down, right? But this is also causing your GDP to fall. But there is another deflation that can also happen because of AD and AS. You cannot write quantity, guys. You cannot write quantity. The safer Haris, the safer option to write here is real GDP. Okay, aggregate supply curve shift to the right. That's also your your price to go down and the real GDP to go up. So the examiner wants to see, yeah, real output is fine, Sanjita. Uh, Sanjita, this is right. So you need to talk about AD falling. It could be because of any sort of any fall of C, I, G, or X minus M can result in the AD curve to shift backward. You can talk about the causes. You can talk about this can result in AD to fall and GDP to fall. But then you can also talk about, yeah, GDP falling is economic recession to happen. Now, you can also talk about aggregate supply curve shifting to the right. Why it could happen? It could be fall in the cost of production. Talk about this could happen because trade unions can become less powerful or key inputs are now discovery of more resources. Give some reasons why aggregate supply can shift to the right, and then talk about the impact in terms of price level and GDP. So this is a really good question because this requires us to talk about why deflation happens, reasons why AD curve can shift to the right, to the left, and reasons why like falling cost and AS curve shifting to the right. Import controls, guys, if you want to write uh, import controls could be causing the imports to basically go down, right? So that's the AD curve shifting to the right kind of a situation, right, Masam? So you don't write this here. The first, Abbas, the first diagram, you know what is happening is that in the first diagram, my AD curve is shifting backward, causing the price level to go down. This happens if there's a fall in C, I, G, or X minus M. Got it? Okay, guys, this is 4A. Let's look at 4B part. So 4A doesn't have anything other than talking about why AD falls, why AS falls, show the diagrams, and that's why it's a good question to do, easy question to do, not that challenging. Got it? Part B says discuss whether the government should use a monetary policy or a fiscal policy to solve the problem of deflation. Okay, so when you look at deflation could be undesirable if there is a fall of AD. So if there is a fall of AD, then it is undesirable. One way to tackle this is through what we call demand side policies. Demand side policy are the policies that will change AD. And the policies, when we look at them, are fiscal policy, which is the demand side policy, and monetary policy. Okay, fiscal policy, guys, is a policy where when you look at fiscal policy, this is the change in G or change in T. Monetary policy is change in money supply that can change interest rates, R for interest rates, right? So you are making in this case, you want the AD to go up, you will make the interest rate to. So what the policy we need to use is expansionary, fiscal, and monetary policy. So when you use expansionary, fiscal, and monetary policies, that will cause this to happen. Does that make sense? Now, what will expansionary fiscal policy do? Expansionary fiscal policy will make, basically, let's say if you increase G or reduce T, that will make the AD to rise, right? Our AD curve will shift to the right. Exactly, Alibas, this will make the AD curve shift to the right. And as a result of this rise in AD, so AD will rise, causing GDP to rise. Okay. Similarly, monetary policy and economy will come out of recession. Monetary policy may, what we do is this, that we make the interest rate to fall so that consumption goes up, investment goes up, AD will go up as a result of that, because when interest rates are low, cost of saving is low, incentive to save is also low. And so as a result, the incentive to save is going down, the cost of borrowing is going down. You may want to sort of borrow more and consume more and invest more, AD will go up, therefore GDP will go up. Also, guys, understand in this case, also you can talk about the hot money. The hot money flows out, causing AD to rise, because when the hot money flows out, we know this exchange rate falls, X minus M as a result goes up because exports are becoming cheaper, imports are becoming expensive, and that will make my AD curve go to the right. So fiscal and monetary policies are used. So this part, you talk about why hot money flows out, because Sanjita, when the interest rates are lower, the foreigners will country abroad, and domestic investors also take the money away from the country and put it in foreign banks. That would mean our exchange rate will depreciate, exports will become cheaper, imports will become expensive, expenses will go up. Now, guys, this once you write this is a lot of writing. Once you talk about basically fiscal and monetary policies, you need to then talk about, because this is discuss whether you would advise the government to use monetary or fiscal. So what is more useful, monetary or fiscal? So here the evaluation matters, because when you look at this kind of a policy, when you're trying to make the AD go up, fiscal policy going up where AD goes up is, like politically popular. So it is politically more popular when it comes to fiscal policy. We've talked about this earlier. We could talk about also the idea that it can be, fiscal policy could be, like geared towards the poor. Right? While monetary policy has an advantage that if you use monetary policy to make the AD go up, it's fine. But yeah, that's also a very good point. Mason said this, that between fiscal and monetary policy, fiscal policy, by the way, fiscal policy has a downside in terms of lags. It may take much longer for politicians to agree and therefore come up with sort of an agreement about that. Monetary policy can be quick to implement, can be quicker. But also the problem with monetary policy is this, that because if you make the interest rate go down and you're using it for managing AD, you might not use it for managing exchange rate. So other goals may get sacrificed. Okay, you can talk about that. Very good point. Ishika is saying fiscal and monetary policy, both are demand side policies, but they only are useful in the short run. For the long run, Ishika, what will you do? For the long run, we need to do supply side policies. So you can write that as a conclusion, that supply side policies are those policies which are more desirable because they are focusing long run versus these policies are short run. So this is your answer for this kind of a question. You can talk about both the policies, give evaluation for both the policies. Okay. Also give both the points. Make sense? Any questions, guys? Mason is asking, how will monetary policy affect the groups who took loan? Well, the interest rates will be lower now. So repayment is easy now. Very good. Abdul Moiz, you can talk about this, that but Abdul Moiz, the problem is this, we are trying, deflation would mean you need to make the AD go up, so prices will go up, but it's a desirable change that you're looking for. So you are not unhappy with this. It's a desirable rise in AD because you are otherwise in an economic recession. Okay. Okay, guys, we are running out of time. So I want to quickly talk about 3A and B. Because of our little internet outage, we were unable to sort of, let's quickly talk about 3A. I'll quickly walk through this. Explain the concept cross elasticity demand. So cross elasticity demand is percentage change in quantity demanded of good A over percentage change in price of good B is your XED. It could be positive or negative. If it's positive and the price goes up and demand is going up, you're looking at substitutes. So positive means we're looking at substitutes like Coke versus Pepsi, and negative means we're looking at complements, for example, tennis ball and tennis rackets. So we quickly talk about that. Then we talk about how is it used to distinguish between goods that are substitutes and complements, and those that have no relationship. If there is no relationship, then we'll XED to be 0. Okay, 0 XED would be. So for mentioning the formula, for mentioning the definition, it shows you relationship between two goods. What it measures is basically, then you talk about also the value. If the value of XED is, high, then it's a strong relationship. as in if it's a minus XED of minus 5, which means it's a strong complement. And if XED is a plus 5, it's a strong substitute. So uh, the value tells us about the strength of the relationship between two goods, and the sign tells us what kind of have. Okay. Can we talk about the usefulness? No, you don't need to talk about the usefulness, but you can talk about usefulness in the part B if it's given. Part B says, let's look at part B, guys. Part B, guys, says that explain the concept of price elasticity can be used to distinguish between. Okay, we've done this. Part B says an economy, we should be mapping out because मैं तो अभी सारे कर रहा हूँ. I'm doing all of them. That's why it's a difficult one, but you should have time for sort of making an outline. Why not? B part says an economy is experiencing a fall in average income during severe recession. Discuss the extent to which the concept of income elasticity of demand and price elasticity of demand can be useful for entrepreneurs. So, guys, the next part is asking us about concept of income and cross. So let's just find a nice space to write this. So first thing first, they're talking about basically how can we use the concept of YD and PED for an entrepreneur when there is a fall in the average incomes during recessions. So during recession, right, you can talk about during recession, your incomes are going down. So when you look at YD, what is YD? YD is percentage change in quantity demanded over percentage change in income. If it's YD is positive, it's a normal good, right? YD is negative, it's an inferior good. So we talk about what the relationship is. If it's positive, it's a normal. If it's negative, it's an inferior. If it's a larger value is greater than 0, it's basically what we call, if it's greater than 1, we call it a luxury good. But if it's the larger the value, the stronger the relationship. We talk about that too. But when you look at the usefulness now, we talk about this, that if if the entrepreneur knows the YD, incomes are falling, and if he's making a normal good, he may decide to basically use this knowledge to change the features of his good, right? Because if you're making a normal good, when the income go down, your demand will fall. And as a result of that, when your demands are falling, you can either do better production planning because your demand is going to go down, or you can start to make what we call inferior substitutes, right? Or you could basically like do better decision in terms of investments. This, that the demand is going to go down, you may want to sort of cut down on investment maybe, or you can also sell it in different market, like export it, and so on and so forth. So knowing why the knows will help you understand that there is a fall of demand, and therefore you may need to act accordingly because there is a recession happening. But when it comes to PED, let's talk about PED now. When it comes to PED, we're looking at a situation where PED is the responsiveness of quantity demanded over percentage change in price. PED is looking at the idea that here you're looking at if the PED has to be always negative, because when the price goes down, the quantity goes up. And in this case, guys, the problem is this, that when your demand is going down and you are looking at the price to go down, from an entrepreneur perspective, PED will inform you how to change your price. Because if your good is inelastic, right, and if you lower your price in recession, your quantity will fall by much more, and your total revenue will fall. But if your good is elastic, and in a recession you lower your price, your total revenue will go up. So as an entrepreneur, if you're deciding to lower your price or increase your price, is what you need to look at. If and therefore your reaction should be dependent on all this. So what you need to understand here is this, that you need to talk about the usefulness here. Now, between the both these guys, which one is more useful is the next question I want to ask you guys. And one would argue this, that probably YD could be more useful here, because incomes are falling and therefore we may need to know the usefulness in that context, in that context. But you can talk about also other points as well, that both of them are useful, because both of them are pointing out to something which is important. Because one is talking about whether you should be moving to new markets, whether you should be, like planning things better. The other one is looking at what will be the impact of total revenue and so on. Makes sense, guys? Any questions? PD knowledge is important. Now, one evaluation you can give, guys, there's an evaluation point that you can give, is this, that while PD and YD are useful as concepts, it's very difficult to calculate the values of PD and YD. They may not be very accurate, and therefore relying upon them may not be always the right thing to do. In my opinion, which one will I attempt? I will always be keen to attempt either number 4 or number 2. Number 4 or number 2. The conclusion, Aisha, I just mentioned, right? For 8 marks, Haris, the best way to look at it, 8 marks, you should spend 16 minutes. 12 marks, you should spend 24 minutes. Typically, 8-mark question is 2 pages. 12-mark question is 3 pages. But it all depends on what your font size is. Why not 3? I just feel I have more to write for 2AB and 4AB, but you can also go for 3. Yeah. A lot of 3 is a very popular question, by the way. A lot of people will go for 3. Investment point for YD, yes, Temur. The investment point for YD was that when I know my demand is going down, I will not want to invest that much. So my investment amount in terms of future production may not be that much. The answer depends on the quality. Honestly, I have a student who used to write half a page, would get an A, and he ultimately got an A star because he would write the right quality of answer. This paper was very easy, Alina. The reason why was this was the COVID paper, right? Everyone was coming out of COVID. That's why the paper was really easy. Yes, I agree with you, Alina, completely. It was a very easy paper. But it also suggests to me that you're prepared. You very prepared. Thank you, guys. I'm going to end this class on this note. You've been a great class. It's been lovely teaching you. I'll see you guys again. Hopefully, next time you have the schedule. And see you guys. Bye-bye. Bye.